The big downside of generative AI is it's a people pleaser. It wants to always give you an answer, even if it doesn't have one. So it's going to just make something up. And so again, you have to trust but verify, have human in the loop still to review this stuff. And so as an IT leader, it's looking at how do we create these governance mechanisms. And then having had some board experience, I go, is this something that goes to audit committee? Kind of like as we started 10, 20 years ago deploying cyber tools, saying how does the audit committee monitor your cyber tools and how on top of things? Because, nobody notices anything until it goes wrong.
Welcome back to Between Fires and Futures. I'm your host, Tonya Terrell, and today we're diving into one of the biggest sources of chaos in tech right now, the pressure to go do AI. Every IT leader is being told to make it happen, but really, how many of you are actually being told how to do it right for your company? My guest today is Michelle Tinsley, CEO of Sciata, where she and her team help companies turn messy data into actionable intelligence. And Michelle is a 30-year technical leader who spent 26 years at Intel in finance, general management, product, and sales. Sounds like all the roles. And since then, she's gone on to found and scale startups, bringing deep experience in fundraising, M&A, and business development. And what I love about Michelle is that she's both visionary and grounded. She knows the AI transformation doesn't start with algorithms or models. It starts with the data, the discipline, and the decisions underneath it all. So in this episode, Michelle's going to share how to start small, prove value fast, and build the kind of transformation that actually sticks. So if you're feeling the pressure to do AI, but you're not sure where to begin, this conversation's your roadmap to sanity, strategy, and real results. So let's dive in. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, so thrilled to have you here. It's always great to have a woman on the show too. Being in tech, so a lot of guys come on the show and they're great and they have great knowledge to share, but I get so excited when I get a female tech leader on the show.
Yeah, I love being here. And again, I go, there's one constant with tech is that it's always changing and always evolving. You can't get bored.
Right. Yes. Oh no, I can barely keep up sometimes. First I'd like to define the problem and identify where to start, because so many IT leaders, like we're hearing it every day, this AI mandate, but not necessarily with a strategy or even a plan behind it. It's just that same thing the IT leaders are hearing, go do AI. So where should they really start?
I usually start with a client looking at their business strategy because I go, to me, tech, if well deployed, supports and helps you achieve your business strategy. So it's dependent on your company, your mission, your vision, your values, the goals that you're setting for your company, how you want to lead in your industry. Then we marry that up with what's your tech stack. Because again, depending on your tech stack, certain tools will work better than others. The AI is not new. It's been around for 15, 20 years. And like our company, we've been doing large language model, predictive modeling AI deployments since 2018. But what is new is more the generative AI, agentic AI, where because you're getting these pre-built models that are pre-trained, you can now, as a smaller firm, access that. Because it used to be AI was for the really big companies. Like when I was at Intel, they had tons of manufacturing data and they could do predictive analytics on yields of making the semiconductors because they had tons of data. But most companies don't have that kind of data lake. And so what we want to do is really get in there and understand, is there an initial use case that's, I say, not mainstream, not your crown jewels, but something where it's high volume, high frequency, and you have a internal team that's embracing it, that wants to learn it. Because if your employees are pulling it and they see the value of, you're going to take these mundane tasks off my plate that just drive me nuts, like say making a bunch of phone calls to confirm appointments, that's a wonderful use case for generative AI to go do that for them. Now they can focus on something more strategic, and they can, again, do more project related work that is usually more fulfilling.
Yeah, that makes sense. Would you say that leaders should start small, pick one small thing?
Yeah, I usually say pick one or two use cases. Again, say, what is our baseline of how we do this today? Either here's how many calls we handle a week. Here's how many chatbot responses or, responses we give to clients. And then say, as we deploy it, what do we think the value will be? Let's go estimate. Is it a 20% reduction, 40% reduction? And then start tracking that as you go. And if it's not realizing the value you thought it was going to, digging in and saying, why is that? Is it the humans are getting in the way and not really embracing this, or they don't want to change the way they're doing things because they just, it's definitely a change of behavior. You're asking people to kind of do their work a little bit differently, to go leverage these tools. But hopefully they again try it enough and get used to it the new way that then feels comfortable for them, and they see that value.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. And, the other thing that we're hearing is that AI projects fail because the data is an issue, right? So, and I know that is your world. So, what are the biggest data mistakes companies make or that you're seeing among, in the market?
Yeah. So sadly, a lot of times we'll get in with a client and they'll say, yeah, we got this giant, vast set of data. And we'll go look at it and go, oh boy, it's like what I call a basement hoarder situation where
Mhm.
there's just, no governance, no compartmentalization. The data may not be structured in a way that the models can read it. And so we do sometimes have to go in and do that initial triage, 3 months, 6 months of data cleansing, organizing it, and then governing it. So basically make sure that, okay, now that we've got it defined. And again, don't boil the ocean. Look at it for the first use cases. And we're literally in an engagement with a client right now where we're saying, let's get really specific. Let's look at,
Mhm.
they want to take and reuse, and refurbish equipment. We go, could they look at just one model to begin with? Because that will again get us a very tangible set of data. We can go get enough history there for that one piece of equipment, but it works with this piece of equipment, it'll work with the other 50.
Mhm.
So again, not trying to go do, let's clean the data for the next year and not get any results, because most companies again are going to want to see kind of waves on the beach, the value coming in and
Right.
going, yeah, we did the initial model, we got some value, now we feel confident about doing more in the model, maybe more variables, more predictability, maybe in this case adding more types of equipment, but basically coming back and saying we can expand on that and then integrate it into production. What our company does not take the approach which some of the big guys do, which is okay, $2 million retainer, or OpenAI is saying come work with us, but $10 million is the entry point. Most companies can't afford that and or don't trust that they're going
Right.
to get anything substantial out of writing that size of a check. And it's a
Right.
reputational risk as a leader to say, man, I don't want to be the one that spent $10 million for a company on something that didn't generate. In this case, it should be 50 million or more of value, because you want to see that ROI.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And those are scary high numbers. I can't imagine anyone would be willing to just write a check for that and, without measurable ROI uh, being revealed. So yeah, all great advice. And I think the research backs that up. I think Gartner recently reported that 80% of enterprise AI projects fail to scale, and the number one reason is poor data quality and governance. And
Yeah.
everyone wants to talk about the AI or the model or the strategy, but the real leverage is in the foundation.
Yeah. And we have another client where sadly they were in a system from the 1990s. So you're like, oh boy, you have the data, but it's not accessible. It's not, cloud hosted. It's not API in and out, So we need to again go do some data structuring work first before we can
Mhm.
really get to that. And sadly, the price of going and doing the data cleanup is prohibitive for some people. But you're like, if you don't even take that first step, it's garbage in, garbage out. You're not going to get
Exactly.
anything good out of a model that you just fed it what you had and what was easily available.
Yeah. Yeah. Garbage in and garbage out. I mean, we've heard that before related to lots of other things related to data, but it's probably more true than ever with AI because it just amplifies the chaos.
Yeah.
And I also feel like there's probably a leadership story here too, right? Like the best leaders have to change the culture around the data. I know we're experiencing that internally in our own ecosystem, but like getting every department to see that accuracy and context and consistency are everyone's jobs. It doesn't just fall to IT, and that's something that we hear a lot too.
And that is again a struggle, is sometimes the IT leader is like, I'm not going to risk my reputation and go across 5 departments and be the one that kind of anoints myself king or queen for the day to go, say this is the path. And so they just kind of let it's a little passive aggressive, but they just let the status quo persist. What we have seen is some companies are actually hiring a chief AI strategist, that's
Hmm.
basically someone with a lot more leadership chops, not
Hmm.
really a technical, let me get in and start working the data, but more of someone who's going to come in and say, okay, let me broker this. Because again, if you're doing AI right, it should be pulling together data that's been siloed in different departments and is,
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it, is when you're joining together those data tables and starting to create that value.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the opportunity there is getting at the data. Um, so I know you mentioned working with a client where AI cut noise by 90% and saved millions of dollars, right? Can you share that story with us?
Yeah.
And how do you define ROI that proves itself fast?
Sure. So we started with a company called Bridger. They're in the oil and gas industry. And their challenge that they were having is they deployed IoT sensors on the pipeline, but the sensors were reporting leaks. And they were sending out people in a truck, and you can think of where pipelines are. They're in the middle of nowhere and sometimes very rugged terrain. It would take days for a technician to get there and then say, you know what, there's no leak. It was a faulty alarm from the sensor. And so they brought us in. We One of the challenges we had to deal with is they were on IBM, kind of more mainframe type technology.
Mhm.
But we said, okay, again, they're not going to re-architect their tech stack, so we'll just work with that. And what we did do is create these predictive models that kind of found the signatures of what was most likely to be a false alarm and what was most likely to be a real alarm. And by doing that, we cut the false alarm signal by 90%. And so just, not having to have technicians go out into the, far reaches of Montana to find out, nope, no leak. That kind of paid for itself for the whole project in 6 months. It was so successful. Bridger then went, there's something to this. It seems kind of crazy that we're going to just hold this internal to our company. What if we actually sold it to the oil and gas industry? So they stood up a new company called Trucos, and the IP that they owned from this AI project became the backbone of what Trucos does today, which is this predictive analytics of a false alarm versus a real alarm on a pipeline leak.
Amazing. So it went from saving millions to generating revenue.
Yeah, becoming a whole new company with
Yeah.
a valuation and revenue stream of its own.
Amazing. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a powerful story.
Well, and our data scientists get mad because they go, man, we should be doing gain sharing on this. And I go, but what you forget is there's a lot of, I call them degrees of Kevin Bacon between
Mhm.
delivering the AI intellectual property and then turning that into a scalable, company. And from startup land, you got to test product market fit. You got to figure out the
Mhm.
marketing. You got to execute to that. You got to live up to your brand promises. And so I go, they're taking all that commercial risk on. And
Mhm.
I'm sure they've innovated on top of the product since then as well. And so, again, we gave it its first steps at life, but they now keep innovating. And because when you're a multi-tenant, software platform, that's going to have a lot different usage requirements than when we were doing it initially for just Bridger.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that story, and when you shared it, when we spoke previously, it just really blew me away. So I definitely wanted to have you share that here. Um, and like we're running a lot of AI campaigns. It's of course like the hottest word in the market right now. Um, and I think IT leaders have more AI opportunities right now than they can possibly pursue. And there's so many ideas coming at them from leadership. How do you think that they should prioritize what to do first and what to set aside?
Yeah, I look at it and go, again, it's the initial cost to get a minimum viable product or a proof of concept going. Again,
Mhm.
what you may have, I would hopefully think a high frequency use case. And then also look at, is there a difference in, again, the departments that would be the customers of this? Sometimes those departments have other things going on. Let's say you're deploying into the finance department. Well, they're coming upon year end and audit. And so they're literally not going to want to be the first one on the list. So it is a bit of that stakeholder management and kind of going out and canvassing internal to your company to say, let's find two or three use cases. But I say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You may try two use cases. Neither of them may work. Neither of them may be the home run, but you're going to learn by deploying that. Why didn't it work? Where was the resistance? Was it that our internal systems are so legacy they need to be upgraded to be able to talk to these more modern solutions, or is it the people internally are the holdup? Is it that individual departments are like, don't mess with my backyard? Hopefully they can see that, hey, we're all in the same boat, we're all working for the same company, we want to excel against competition and really get people aligned to that vision of where the company needs to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah. And I also think, and this kind of goes back to that leadership mindset where innovation really used to mean big bets. But in this era, I feel like it's so much more about smart sequencing because there's so much AI can do. And I think we get really, really excited about it. I know we do, even in our own small business, we get really excited about what AI can do. And we just did our quarterly planning. Um, and we want to do all the things, but we had to get really disciplined about what are the 2 to 3 priorities that we want to attack this quarter that move the business forward.
Yeah.
And that eliminated this giant wish list of stuff that we will go do later. It's on the wish
Hmm.
list. Um, but yeah, I think that smart sequencing is really important in terms of how you approach AI. Um, you don't have to say yes to everything to be
Well, no, and
innovative.
I
You
think
just
it's hard to provide that focus because it does
yeah,
mean, any good strategy means you're saying no to doing some other things.
yeah,
And so making that a conscious choice and not an unconscious choice versus saying, yeah, let's go try to do 20 things because we've got 20 departments and they can
right.
all individually run it. But then you go, where again is that oversight governance and the capturing of the learnings and doing it. Sometimes you have to slow down to kind of really measure those learning steps.
Yeah, yeah. I think we likened it to the, when you're climbing, like mountain climbing. If you're
Hmm.
climbing Everest, you get to base camp, then you have to climb back down, level out, and then get to base camp 2, go back down, level out, acclimate, and it to a degree it feels like that.
Hmm.
And I think like I was reading Gartner's 2025 CIO agenda said that 54% of AI investments this year were stalled because leaders just hadn't defined clear value metrics or ownership. So prioritization isn't about a lack of ideas, it's about just focus and clarity and focusing on use cases and projects that can actually deliver real results and become visible, like visibly improve how the business runs, because that
Yeah.
visibility will then drive momentum for other things.
Well, and I think too, it's again saying no to some of the day to
Yeah.
day. So the beauty of us coming in as consultants, we're solely focused on the purpose of delivering this for your company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
again,
great.
some people will have to kind of check their ego and go, yeah, I'm going to just outsource this first project or again, the initial model building and the initial data cleanup because I know it'll get done by a certain
Right.
date because that's what's in the scope of work. And we deliver, but you give it to somebody internally as a learning and a growth opportunity and a stretch, but then you take nothing off their plate. Now
Hmm.
you're just asking them to work from 60 hours a week to 80.
Yeah.
And so it's just most people look at it and go, at the end of the day, 4 months later nothing's happened because they're just so pulled in five directions they can't focus to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we see that. We're hearing that a lot from our IT leaders in our community. Michelle, when you look across your clients, what patterns do you see in the use cases that actually deliver early wins? Are there patterns?
Yeah, I think again a customer success one. So a lot of people had added in the past chatbots to their website, but it's now adding AI behind those chatbots to say. And Klarna is a great example. They're not our client, but they blog about their AI journey, and so I kind of look at it and go, even though they're fintech, their learnings are applicable to other industries, which
Hmm.
is again something that's not rocket science. But they saw that with having the AI answer the chat questions from customers, it was 25% more likely to be accurate on the first response than the human.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. Um, what's your advice to IT leaders? Because IT teams are already underwater with requests. Like we hear it, we're underfunded, under resourced, but we're being asked to do more. And now AI is getting thrown into the mix. So how can leaders take on AI without breaking their teams?
I think it's again taking the sprint mentality of software development to AI and
Mhm.
going, don't just pick one big mega project for next year, because what that does is it's very risky. It's like saying
Mhm.
when you're betting in poker, I'm going to go all in on one hand, and it's like,
Mhm.
wow, you got to be really sure that's an amazing
Yeah.
hand, and all it's just very singularly risky. So by saying, okay, maybe every month we're going to try a different use case. Over the course of a year, that's 12 different experiments. You're going to learn a lot through that.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is, again, starting that learning with your organization. I was pleased. I went last week to a conference here in Phoenix that was with state and local municipal CIOs. And one, the city of Gilbert, he has had AI deployed across their team for 3 years now. So again,
Wow.
when people come back and go, AI is not happening, it's just a bunch of hype. Look at nobody's getting value. It's like, well, here's a municipal group that's been learning for 3 years already. So I can guarantee they're
Mhm.
going to get things done a lot quicker. And what they're looking at is going, okay, it's slowed our hiring. It's helped us scale and service more clients more quickly. And the beauty is like things like 24/7. Nobody wants to work the shift at midnight to 4 a.m., but some people need city services or have a question at that time.
Mhm.
Perfect opportunity to use the technology to go cover that time slot, not 8 to 5.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, I think the other thing that I feel like I see IT leaders doing, and just entrepreneurs in general doing, is kind of tinkering with AI tools and calling that doing AI. So, what's that line between tinkering with tools and truly transforming a business?
I think it's literally again the tinkering is learning,
Mhm.
but again trying to set multiple experiments going during the year. We've seen finance be a great entry point for some of this stuff as well, because lo and behold, they're closing the books 12 times a year. So that's
Mhm.
again another high frequency use case. I remember being a financial analyst way back in the day, I had to go do floor to book physical inventories and then book to floor. What if the AI is selecting, what you need to go find? And it's going to read and look for, again, those higher risk, higher um, areas where you really should be testing versus just doing a generic sample across the whole base. And so I find that, again, these are places where you can add more value. Maybe it's not 20% is audited. Maybe you're only auditing 5% because you're picking on the threads that are the riskiest, most, kind of concerning areas when you do that audit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, true transformation isn't about adding a shiny new capability. It's really about rethinking how value is created in the business.
Yeah.
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 Um, and you can tell the difference by the questions I think leaders are asking, right? If they're asking, what can AI do? And some of the questions that we're hearing, with our conversations with IT leaders indicate it's tinkering. Like, what can AI do versus asking something along the lines of, what do we want to be able to do because of AI? Um,
And that's where I come and
By that,
say, share with me instead your problem. Because I
yeah.
mean, that's the beauty of AI is it's going to unleash a ton of creativity. Some of it's super
Yes.
useful, some of it just hilarious and not so useful. Like, I mean, I think
Yeah.
a month or two ago, people were doing the, hey, chat GPT, roast me, or give me
Yeah.
a Michelle Tinsley action figure, and I was like, haha, it had cats in it, not a shock. But but I'm like, it's one of these where you go, well, that's fun and interesting. Is that really worth the compute cycles? So let's
Right.
really again focus on something that's a true business problem that we want to solve, so that we're not just tinkering, but that we're actually getting to something that will be valuable. We've seen at our company just the ability to put in all of our scopes of works in our private in-house implementation of Copilot, not the public one. But then saying, based on that, I now need a new scope of work for a client. It can generate that first pass. We still need to customize it to the exact client engagement and what we're delivering, but 80% of it's done. The confidentiality and the indemnification sections aren't changing. And so, rather than pulling out a Word doc and reading through it, 11 pages and trying to find places to edit, we can glance through and say, you know, tailor this for a customer in the manufacturing industry, and again, get a scope of work that's going to be more relevant to them.
Hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Um, I know that you mentioned you have an intro offer that helps companies land on 2 or 3 use cases worth doing. So I'd love to hear what that looks like and what kind of use cases usually rise to the top.
Yeah, so we call it our sushi bite offering because it's just 10K. We're like, it's not, again, the 10 million, that it costs to
Right.
get started with
Right.
OpenAI. But essentially, we go in and say, first, give us your business strategy and your tech stack. That's kind of homework that we do before we then lead a workshop with 5 to 10 of your leaders from your company. In that workshop, it's usually 4 hours. We will come out of that with 2 or 3 first use cases. But then we
Mhm.
save the bulk of the consulting engagement to be coaching for the next 2 months. And so
Mhm.
weekly, we'll be doing check ins to say, how's this going? Where are the KPIs now? What are you seeing? What did you learn? What help do you need? Because again, we're Switzerland, we're not part of the organization. So it's
Right.
kind of getting and addressing that change management, the people aspect of things. Because
Mhm.
again, a lot of times the tech is fine, the tech can work. It's just more as an employee, I'm hesitant to really change the way I've always done this, or I don't feel like my boss is supportive, or boy, if we do this, great. Maybe they won't need 4 of us customer service reps; they'll only need 2. And so
Right.
there's these fears that you uncover with the employees that, okay, let's work through that. Like, what's your career path? Do you want to be a customer service rep forever, or is a successful AI implementation now liberate you to go do that next thing at the company?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, and to be honest, I think it's really easy to overthink AI strategy, especially when you're in it. You're in the business, you're in the challenges of the business, you're in the pressure of the business. And at least it's been my experience that the truth is some of the best use cases are hiding in plain sight, but you're in it, you're in the weeds, you can't see it. And so
Hmm.
having an outside perspective, being able to sort of zoom out from the business, um, it's really the truth is some of the AI initiatives we're doing came from our clients, hearing what they had to say, hearing what they were struggling with, and they were not that they were completely in plain sight, but we couldn't see them until we had someone help us zoom out.
Yeah.
And so I think there's huge value in bringing someone from the outside to evaluate your business, evaluate, your strategy, the direction you want to go, what are your priorities, look at your tech stack, and then get perspective because it's so hard to have perspective when you're in it.
Yeah, and I think again, I think the early adopters in this technology were SaaS companies in startup land because they looked at it and went, we're going to go need to get funding, and there's no way we're going to have a funding story for VCs unless we've already adopted AI and show how we're leveraging it to be smarter than just rolling your own code and figuring, oh, that's for other people. We're not a chatbot, and therefore it doesn't apply to us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what do you think the next wave of AI adoption looks like for IT leaders? And where do you see the biggest opportunities emerging right now?
I think the biggest thing will be again generative AI, and unleashing some of that creativity and the ability to get a more polished output from some of these high repeat tasks. But then you
Hmm.
go, I think the agentic is still a way off because I think
Yeah.
people have to really think hard about the governance structures with agentic. It's kind of like when we went from paper POs to e-invoicing.
Hmm.
There was a huge worry that, oh my gosh, we're going to suddenly wire a bunch of money out of the company and pay a bunch of bills too early or pay too much. And so how do you put the checks and balances and controls in that so that you kind of again ease into that? What you don't want to do is again go hog wild on this, but I think the first step is usually generative AI and then agentic AI. I think the other issue is, people say, oh, well, I can stand up a website in a weekend, or I can, create a mobile app in a week. And it's like, yes, that may work for like, again, a MVP. But
Hmm.
if you've got a client that's again a living, thriving $100 million plus enterprise business, what those tools come up with is not going to scale. So, again, you need to really do some due diligence on, is this going to be some lightweight thing that is again a great kind of teaser, or is this going to really be a production solution?
Right. Right. And, the McKinsey's latest research shows that biggest growth opportunities aren't in isolated tools, but integrated ecosystems, which is
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about. I think that's where the transformation really, really happens. And I love your thoughts on this. Really starting to think that the next wave of AI, really even now, is going to demand a new kind of IT leadership. Um, like less command and control, more orchestration and enablement. I think that the leadership requirements are evolving.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that? Are you
Yeah, and
seeing the
that's what I
same
was going to
thing?
say. I think some of this is as you deploy at a company, say 20 different generative AI tools, how are you
Mhm.
monitoring? Is there a new
Right.
business reporting dashboard that has the
Hmm.
health of these tools? And again, are we feeding it the right data? Are we getting the right responses? The big downside of generative AI is it's a people pleaser. It wants to always give you an answer, even if it doesn't have
Right.
one. So it's going to just make something up. And so
Yeah.
again, you have to trust but verify, have human in the loop still to review this stuff. And so, as an IT leader, it's looking at how do we create these governance mechanisms. And then, having had some board experience, I go, is this something that goes to audit committee? Kind of like as we started 10, 20 years ago deploying cyber tools, saying, how does the audit committee monitor your cyber tools and how on top of things? Because, nobody notices anything until it goes wrong, and
Hmm.
and so it's kind of like you could fill the room with carbon monoxide and you don't want everybody keeling over. And so with AI, how do you make sure that you're staying on top of it and monitoring it 24 by 7? And I've seen some interesting startups in this space that are both creating these platforms to kind of monitor across all the use cases and models, because there's some like Adobe's amazing at images and video, but it's not going to give you an answer or write a scope of work. And so looking at using the different tools for the different purposes and then pulling that together.
Yeah. It's. I think we're just heading into very interesting times. It's a really exciting time to be alive. A little scary even, but certainly very interesting times ahead.
Yeah.
Um, and you've led inside of both big, large enterprises and in startups. So I think you bring a really unique perspective. I don't think that a whole lot of people have, experience, a depth of experience in both. So what lessons stand out for IT leaders who are trying to drive change in these times right now?
Yeah, so I think part of it is, going when you come from corporate America, again, there's a very high bar on professionalism and standards. You go into startup land and it's like security, we'll get there later. And it's like, well, that comes back to bite you,
Hmm.
So, what I love about being in private equity now is it's kind of that road in the middle. So,
Hmm.
IT leaders need to consider what's the environment and ecosystem I'm in, what's that bar, and always be looking to be proactive. I always say, like, any kind of functional leader, whether you're the CFO or the IT leader or the CMO, you're in that C-suite because you're seeing around the corners. You're looking at, okay, knowing what our company's vision and charter and where we're headed. How do I make sure that my team is raising early and often any kind of potential headwinds? Now they may not turn out, but at least we were aware and had some strategies and countermeasures developed. It's kind of like your business continuity planning, but really looking at, okay, how do we make sure that as we get down this path, that we're going to run into some headwinds or issues, and how do we go address that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think adaptive leadership is probably more, I mean, it's always needed, but probably more so now than ever before, being able to pivot strategy in response to the change without losing alignment toward that vision. Um, and it was in preparation for this reading, some of the research. I think MIT's 2025 CIO leadership study basically said the same thing, that the top performing IT leaders share that common trait of adaptive leadership. And Gartner backs that up. IT organizations that embrace iterative planning and transparent communication are 2.5 times more likely to deliver successful transformation outcomes, even in volatile conditions.
Yeah.
So I think the lesson here is that stable leadership is really adaptive leadership. It doesn't mean staying still, it means staying centered while everything around you is moving. And that is more like it's moving so fast now, exponentially fast.
Yeah. I say setting a tone of calmness, to basically
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, what do we know? What do we not know? We're going to have to proceed without knowing everything.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to come up with a perfect solution, but what could be a workable solution for
Yeah.
now? And let's just keep going. Because I think that kind of lets your team kind of breathe a sigh of relief of like, oh my gosh, I thought we were going to enter into a 6 month planning cycle and have to come up with
Mm-hmm.
a, perfect solution. And therefore, it just comes across as
It's
this giant
changing
endeavor.
so fast. There's no such thing as a perfect solution because what's
Yeah,
perfect today is not going to be perfect tomorrow.
exactly.
So, Michelle, if IT leaders could focus on one thing for the rest of 2025 and early 26 to set themselves up for success, what do you think that should be?
I think it's really auguring in on the position they're in. What is the key to success for this business? What are the biggest threats or competitive factors that we face? And how does IT become a solution to that? Because again,
Mhm.
it means help. You can then use that as a backbone to say, hey, I hear you, one department, but by the way, let's say we're getting clobbered on pricing and competition. I need to give the marketing team a project to go up level their skill set and functionality, and we're going to have to put yours on a back burner for 6 months to go do this other one. Again, usually these leaders of the different functions can understand that when you give them, again, the rational, our whole boat, our whole business is going in this direction. And
Yeah.
so, having the IT leaders really be the vocal point for that helps.
And if you could give one final piece of advice, like one sentence that IT leaders could put on a post-it note and stick on their monitor, what would that be? I really love to give them like actionable
Yeah, I think
something
it's
they
be flexible. Just,
yeah.
keep your eyes and ears open and be adaptable. The
Yeah.
good news is you no longer have to be the smartest person in the room. But again, it's really that knowing when to kind of listen and lean in and when to kind of hear the voices of your stakeholders and again, make the priority call.
Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. And, what I've really loved about this conversation is it brings AI back to what actually matters because there's so much hype. And I think, honestly, what I'm really feeling and hearing is that everyone is tired of the hype. And, we've got to bring it back to what actually matters in business. And I love that you've talked about the clean data, clear priorities, real business results. And for an IT leader just trying to cut through all that hype and noise to understand where it really counts. And so, what I want to offer is we've got your offer that you described, your entry offer loaded into a landing page on technologymatch.com. And so, for any IT leader who really is just trying to cut through the chaos and start where it really counts, where you can uh, get your arms around a couple, two or three specific use cases that that you can set yourselves up for measurable ROI. I'd suggest you go to technologymatch.com, search for Sciata. That is SCIATA.
Yes, it's science and
SCIATA.
data coming together. Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. That
Yeah.
makes it easy to remember. Science and data coming together, Sciata. And you'll find dedicated solution pages on a couple things, actually. We've got the data as a service, project design and implementation, on-demand tech specialists, and also this entry level offer that Michelle talked about. Or you can connect directly with Michelle on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Michelle, huge thank you for joining me and really just bringing a grounded, practical lens to this overhyped topic that has gotten kind of fuzzy. So I think, you've really brought a grounded voice and I think given some actionable feedback, which I love. And if you enjoyed this episode, follow Between Fires and Futures wherever you listen and share this with fellow IT leaders who are navigating the same pressure to do AI. Until next time, I'm Tonya Terrell. Thanks for listening.
Sounds good. Thank you.